Two food service no-nos: cooks handling food with their bare hands and trouble keeping seafood cool.
Have you ever ordered fish and wondered why it didn't taste like anything from the ocean? There was a time when a fillet meant something honest. Simple seasoning, a flaky cut, maybe even wrapped in butcher paper. So, how did we end up with meals that look the same but feel like something's missing? Today at the Hidden Menu, we take a deep dive into why fish at certain chains might not be all it claims to be. So let us start with 1. Red Lobster's endless shrimp that isn't quite what it seems. For a lot of people, Red Lobster used to mean something special. Maybe it was a birthday dinner, a celebration, or just a rare treat on the weekend. You remember the buttery biscuits, the paper napkins, the sound of crackling shrimp hitting the fryer in the back. And then came the endless shrimp deal, the kind of thing that made you feel like you were getting something extra. A little indulgence without the guilt. But these days, that endless pile of shrimp might be giving you less than you think. Former servers at multiple Red Lobster locations have shared a quiet reality behind the scenes. The shrimp being served during endless shrimp promotions are often the smallest, cheapest variety available. Not the plump, juicy ones from the photo, but tiny, heavily breaded shrimp that shrink even further once cooked. One cook described them as barely more than pink nuggets. Another said the shrimp were shipped frozen in bulk, thawed in tubs, and flash fried without much care. The seasoning comes from the sauce, not the shrimp itself, and the pace matters. Customers have reported that during these deals their first plate arrives quickly, but every plate after that takes longer and longer. A retired couple shared that after the third round, their server disappeared for nearly 20 minutes. By the time the food came, they were no longer hungry. Industry insiders say this is intentional. Slowing down service discourages guests from ordering more, keeping costs down while still offering the illusion of endless. What's also left unsaid is how much salt and oil is packed into each portion. Nutritionists note that endless shrimp meals often contain more sodium than a full day's recommended intake, especially when doused in garlic butter or cocktail sauce. For seniors or people managing health conditions, that turns a fun deal into a quiet risk. But none of that shows up on the menu. It's just endless. And that word, like so many others, does not mean what it used to. You walk away thinking you got a deal. But what you really got was a clever use of breading, sauce, and delay. It is not about feeding you. It is about filling time, filling space, and keeping the shrimp small enough that you do not notice until it is already over. 2. McDonald's Filet-O-Fish and the quiet switch no one noticed. There's something about the Filet-O-Fish that feels frozen in time. A soft bun, a square patty, a slice of cheese that never quite stays in place. For some folks, it's a taste of childhood. For others, it's a meatless option that feels safe, simple, and oddly comforting. But behind that steamed bun and familiar wrapper is a quiet shift that most customers never realized happened. At one point, the Filet-O-Fish was made from cod. Then it became pollock. Today, it's typically Alaskan pollock, one of the most heavily processed and widely fished species used in fast food. While the box still says wild caught, former supply chain employees say the reality is more complicated. The fish is minced, pressed into blocks, then sliced into perfect squares. And that process happens long before the sandwich gets anywhere near a fryer. One former McDonald's manager said the Filet-O-Fish patties arrive pre-frozen and fully shaped, like little fish bricks. The breading adds bulk. The tartar sauce and half slice of cheese do the rest. And because the sandwich is steamed rather than toasted, it all melts together into something soft enough to hide the texture of what's actually inside. Nobody ever opens it, the manager said. They just eat it. Customers who've been eating the sandwich for decades say it tastes different now. Blander, saltier, less fishy in a way that's hard to describe. A retired factory worker who grew up on Filet-O-Fish Fridays said he still buys it, but mostly out of habit. When asked why, he said, "It reminds me of something I liked." But it's not the same thing anymore. Nutritionally, the sandwich isn't awful, but it's not great either. High in sodium, low in actual omega-3s, and heavily reliant on processing to stay consistent across thousands of stores. For people watching their health or trying to avoid overly processed food, the filet-o fish might not be the quiet, safe bet it once seemed. But McDonald's rarely advertises what's changed. The name is the same, the photo is the same, and that's enough to keep people coming back. What used to be a simple fish sandwich is now something engineered to look and taste the way you remember. But memory can be manipulated. And sometimes we keep eating things not because they're good, but because they remind us of when they were. 3. Popeye's seafood combos that lead with crunch and end with confusion. Popeye's is known for one thing above all else: crunch. That golden coating, that loud first bite, it's what brings people back again and again. So when they add fish or shrimp to the mix, it feels like a no-brainer. Same crunch, different protein. You order the seafood basket or the surf and turf combo and think you're getting the best of both worlds. But under all that breading, there is less fish than most people expect, and sometimes barely any at all. Former employees say that seafood portions at Popeyes are among the most heavily breaded items on the menu. One prep cook described the shrimp as mostly coating with a tail. Another said the fish fillets, typically used in the sandwich, are sliced thin to cook fast and stretch the supply. It's a 2-bite item with a 4-bite crust, he joked. Customers have shared similar stories. The outer shell crunches loud, but the inside is soft, sparse, or gone too quickly. Popeyes rarely advertises the size or cut of the seafood used. The photos show thick, golden pieces, but the real portions often look flatter and smaller. A retired bus driver who orders the fish combo, every Lent said the last one he got felt like it collapsed in my hands. He still ate it, but he did not go back. The sauces help. Popeyes offers strong, tangy dips that carry the meal's flavor even if the protein underneath is weak. And the sides, biscuits, rice, fries, fill out the tray. That gives the illusion of a full meal, even if the main item disappears in 3 or 4 bites. But when you break it down, what you're really eating is a memory of fried fish, held together by batter and branding. For older customers especially, who grew up with thicker fish, fewer shortcuts, and less trickery, this kind of meal can feel quietly disappointing. Not because it tastes bad, but because it tastes like less. Less fish, less effort, less honesty. The crunch is real, the flavor is real, but the substance might not be. And once you notice that difference, it's hard to go back to pretending you didn't. If your fillet came out shaped like a perfect rectangle and tasted like nostalgia with a side of glue, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. We are decoding the fishy math one meal at a time. 4. Olive Garden's seafood pasta that's more cream than catch. There was a time when ordering seafood at a sit-down restaurant meant you were treating yourself. You expected something rich but honest. A bowl of pasta tangled with shrimp, maybe a few scallops, and a sauce that actually let the seafood stand out. At Olive Garden, the seafood dishes still carry that suggestion. You see phrases like shrimp scampi or seafood alfredo, and you picture something generous, maybe even a little luxurious. But what actually arrives at the table tells a quieter, starchier story. Several former Olive Garden servers say the seafood portions and pasta dishes have been shrinking for years, even as the sauce and noodles stay the same or grow. One longtime employee from Michigan said that the shrimp count in the scampi was quietly reduced from 8 to 5 in some locations, with no mention on the menu. We were told to stir it in deep so it looks like more, she said. The Alfredo-based seafood dishes, she added, are about the sauce and nothing else. Customers have noticed. A retired couple in Arizona shared that their last seafood fettuccine came with 3 shrimp and 1 rubbery scallop, lost in a sea of thick cream and overcooked pasta. It tasted like butter and salt, they said, but nothing like the ocean. It's the kind of disappointment that does not hit right away. You're halfway through the meal before you realize what's missing. In restaurant kitchens, seafood is expensive. Cream, pasta, and garlic are not. That's why dishes are built in layers. Start with a mountain of noodles, smother it in sauce, and then scatter the seafood where it shows. That's also why many dishes at Olive Garden are pre-portioned. Staff do not scoop seafood by eye. They grab a bag, drop it in, and trust the plate will look full enough by the time it reaches the customer. For diners watching their nutrition or hoping for a leaner meal, this is especially misleading. These pasta bowls can run over 1,000 calories and still leave you wondering where the shrimp went. The protein content is often lower than expected, and the sodium levels quietly high. It's filling, but not in the way you intended. Over time, your expectations adjust. You stop noticing the seafood count and focus on the warmth of the bowl, the comfort of the sauce. But what was once a seafood dish becomes a pasta dish that happens to include seafood, and the shift, like so many others, goes unspoken. 5. Captain D's meals that look big and taste small. For many families, Captain D's was the go-to place when they wanted seafood without the fuss. You could drive through, pick up a box of battered fish, hush puppies, fries, maybe a little slaw, and head home with dinner in your lap. It was simple, affordable, and tasted familiar, even if you couldn't quite say what kind of fish it was. But lately, more customers are asking that question, and what they're finding out is not exactly comforting. Captain D's lists most of their fish simply as whitefish, a term that could mean cod, pollock, hoki, or even tilapia, depending on the supplier and the season. Former employees say they rarely knew what kind of fish they were serving, just that it came frozen, pre-breaded, and packed in giant boxes labeled by lot number, not species. One cook said they were trained not to answer customer questions about origin. Just say it's mild and flaky, he recalled. The portions, too, have changed. A former manager admitted that combo meals have seen a quiet reduction in fillet size, even as the box stays the same. They shape the breading so it looks big, she said, but the fish inside is thin now, really thin. Customers have reported fillets breaking apart mid-bite or being so over-fried that the fish dries out instantly. One senior customer said she got 2 pieces in her box and still left the table hungry. The sides make up the difference. Fries, hush puppies, even mac and cheese, all cheap to produce and easy to pile high. The full box looks generous, but the protein that used to anchor the meal now plays second fiddle. It's a trick of proportions. And unless you stop and ask, you might not even notice what changed. Captain D's meals used to feel balanced, not fancy, but fair. Now they feel like fast food wearing a familiar disguise. The branding still leans on images of fishing boats and anchors. The commercials still speak to quality, but the fish has become a minor character in its own meal. And for those who remember the old days, that realization is more than just a letdown. It's a quiet shift in trust, one hush puppy at a time. 6. Chili's fish tacos that don't hold up after the first bite. Fish tacos used to feel like something simple and special. A warm tortilla, a little grilled fish, a squeeze of lime, maybe some shredded cabbage and sauce. Chili's version of the fish taco promises that kind of experience. Bright, coastal, maybe even a little fresh. But what actually ends up on your plate can feel more like an afterthought than a main dish. And the more you eat, the more it falls apart. Several former Chili's kitchen staff say the fish used in tacos is usually thawed from frozen blocks, pre-seasoned, and portioned to stretch across multiple locations. It's not grilled fresh, one cook said. It's pressed, flash frozen, and reheated. Most people wouldn't know unless they worked the line. The pieces are small, often broken or uneven, and rely on toppings to create visual appeal. Cover it in slaw and drizzle the sauce just right, one server explained. That's the trick. Customers have shared that their tacos arrive soggy, with limp tortillas and fish that barely holds together. A retired mechanic who ordered them on a Tuesday said it tasted like sauce on a sponge. The toppings were generous, but the fish underneath was forgettable, bland, thin, and gone in 2 bites. I could have eaten 3 orders and still wanted something real, he said. The issue is not that Chili's is trying to deceive anyone. It's that the fish taco is marketed as something fresh and satisfying when it's really built like a side item in disguise. You don't feel scammed. You just feel unsatisfied. And over time, that quiet feeling turns into a habit of not ordering it again. The calorie count can also be misleading. With heavy sauces and tortillas fried or grilled in oil, the dish can reach numbers that don't match its size or substance. For seniors or anyone trying to eat light, it's a subtle contradiction. A dish that feels light but hits heavy and leaves you still hungry. Fish tacos at Chili's were meant to be a nod to something better, something fresh, coastal, even a little fun. But now they serve as a reminder that not every menu item is built to satisfy. Some are built to look the part, deliver just enough flavor, and disappear before you start asking too many questions. 7 Applebee's fish and chips that feel like they skipped a step. Fish and chips at a casual sit-down place used to feel like a comfort meal. Not fancy, but filling. The kind of plate that hit the table hot and golden, with steam rising off thick-cut fries and a fillet that flaked with a fork. At Applebee's, the menu still carries that promise. The name hasn't changed. The photo still shows a generous slab of fish tucked between lemon wedges and sauce. But customers are starting to notice that what they get is not quite what they expected. Former cooks say the fish portion in Applebee's fish and chips has been quietly reduced in some locations, especially when part of seasonal or promotional menus. The pieces come pre-breaded and frozen, portioned for uniformity and speed. One kitchen worker said they were instructed to plate it with a mountain of fries to make the fillet seem larger. "We'd fry the fish quick and stack the fries high," he said. "People see the pile and assume it's a full meal." But once you cut into the fish, it often tells a different story. Customers describe the inside as soft, almost mushy, with a texture that does not match the crispy coating. A retired nurse who ordered it out of nostalgia said, "It looked right, but it fell apart the second I touched it." Another diner shared that his fish had more breading than meat. Crispy, yes, but hollow. "Like biting into a shell," he said. Applebee's uses efficient prep systems, and that means most items are assembled from pre-cooked or frozen components. The fish is not seasoned in-house, it is not cut to order. It is shipped, stored, and dropped in the fryer straight from the bag. The tartar sauce and lemon do most of the flavor work. The fries stretch the visual balance, and the fish itself fades into the background. Nutritionally, the meal clocks in high, often over 1,000 calories, much of it from oil and salt. But what lingers more than the number is the feeling that you ordered a classic and got a copy. That the warmth and weight of the plate disguised how little was there. For customers chasing a memory or just trying to get their money's worth, it's the kind of meal that leaves you staring at your plate, wondering when the shift happened. The name stayed the same. But the fish? The fish became a placeholder, and the meal quietly became something less than what it promised. 8 Long John Silver's Crunch that covers more air than fish. There was a time when going to Long John Silver's felt like something different. Not just fast food, but its own kind of experience. Plastic trays with paper liners, vinegar bottles on the table, hush puppies still warm in the corner of the box. The fish was always fried, always crispy, and always came with little crunchy bits scattered like confetti across the plate. That crunch became part of the brand, so much so that some people ordered extra. But over the years, that same crunch has become a kind of camouflage. Former employees say Long John Silver's relies heavily on portion shaping and breading thickness to maintain consistency and control costs. The fillets are often thin to begin with, about half an inch at most, but the breading makes them look bigger. "It's puffed out like a balloon," one former cook said. "Crispy outside, but sometimes barely any fish inside." When broken open, the difference is stark. A wide golden shell surrounding a surprisingly small core. Customers have noticed, especially longtime regulars who remember thicker fillets and firmer bites. One retired trucker described his last order as a crunchy pocket with fish fumes. It looked full, felt heavy in the box, but disappeared in 3 bites. And it is not an accident. Long John Silver's has built its presentation around the visual volume. Large pieces, tall breading, fill the tray and keep it moving. That strategy extends to sides and filler. Fries, hush puppies, corn, slaw, easy to stack, cheap to make. The box feels generous. The meal feels warm. But when you break it down, the protein content is often lower than expected. One nutritionist reviewed a typical 2-piece meal and noted that, by weight, over half of the calories came from batter and oil. The branding leans on nostalgia. The pirate theme, the vintage tones, the jingles that still play in some markets. It all signals something familiar, but the product underneath has shifted quietly. Thin fillets, more coating, fewer nutrients, and most customers only notice when they finish eating and feel oddly unfulfilled. For seniors who remember the old menu, or just expect fish to mean something substantial, the new version can feel like a trick in plain sight. The crunch is still there. The warmth is still there. But the fish is hiding. And unless you slow down to look, you might not realize how far it's drifted. If your last fish dinner felt more like fried mystery than a catch of the day, drop your story in the comments, toss us a like you're casting a line, and subscribe to the hidden menu before the next meal swims right past your expectations. And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.